to meet you. And my name is
Likewise.
Raquel Dominguez. I am in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I do industrial psychology and aviation human factors and performance. And I'm a former mental health therapist. I wanted to ask you, this is such an interesting and it's so new. What are some of the biggest regulatory or, uh, you know, challenges that you foresee in the industry of air mobility?
Yes, excellent question, Raquel, and fascinating background you have.
Thank you.
Um, Love Colorado Springs, by the way. Beautiful part of the country. Um, yes, so from a regulatory perspective, as I'm sure you've seen, the FAA did publish the SFAR final rule on powered lift. Um, It's quite a detailed and thorough document. Um, Being a new space, it's has to be at a high level of detail. Um, I remember when it first went out for public comment, and there were talks that the kind of person, the kind of skill set that was necessary to fly one of these new fully electric VTOL aircraft. Um, I was really struggling to see how we would be able to train and qualify enough people at the scale that's being discussed. Um, and so I actually see more of the challenge being on the recruitment side,
Sure.
right? Especially because if we're going to demand that individuals be, have such a degree of expertise, and yet at the same time we're not able to assure them that the time and the money and the effort that they put in to be able to fly these new vehicles will result in a return on investment, right? That they will be able
Sure.
to secure enough hours as a pilot in these aircraft to make a meaningful career out of it. Um, I think we just need to acknowledge that that's a difficult ask of people. There's certainly plenty of jobs in aviation, in particular as a pilot. Um, Passenger air travel is not going to go away anytime soon.
No.
So that's certainly a safer path. Yeah, I do. I think that our biggest challenge is going to be on recruiting individuals to fly these new advanced air mobility aircraft.
Do you see any other concerns when it comes to like infrastructure globally that supports air mobility?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it starts with doing thorough energy assessments. Any community that's interested in being able to support electric aviation, we have to do the work on the front end to understand what the available grid capacity is. Right. I mean, it's plain to see
Yeah.
electric aircraft need to recharge. If the local grid can't support the necessary power levels, then we need to better understand, well, what's the cost to upgrade the grid? Are we going to introduce a microgrid? Ideally, and the AIM Institute would very much advocate that any additional electricity generation be both new and clean. Um, we're not we're very much would be failing on our initiatives aimed at sustainability, right? At reducing carbon footprint if the added electricity to support these zero emission on the operational side, these zero emission aircraft, if the electricity used to power them are from, rather dirty coal burning um, operations. So Yeah, it starts with the energy assessments, then investing the time and money into upgrading local grid, and then of course supplying the necessary and safely certified electric charging equipment. And that's an effort that I don't know that we'll achieve a universal charging standard. So we also have to be a bit careful, perhaps in a sense, because of the relative range limitations. We are there's a slight advantage in that there aren't as many complications if the aircraft, like presumably, will have the same charging standard at least within a given country. But certainly between countries, we'll have to we'll have to continue to advocate for harmonizing those standards. And there are winners and losers in a commercial sense when you engage in standardizing and harmonization, as you're probably familiar. So that's a difficult thing to do, and that's something that governments have struggled with in all forms of electric applications.
Absolutely. Right now, especially recently here, I'm wondering with all the technology and, just drones and air mobility is great. I see it more as like it's helping with congestion. We're growing so fast and we don't have the infrastructure on the ground, home developments in certain parts of the country, like for example, in Colorado Springs, we are building faster than we can, keep up with infrastructure. And then you have the cybersecurity, right? Um, do you see any potential risk and as we get more innovative in air mobility with cybersecurity in general?
So this is a brilliant question, Raquel. And an initiative at the AIM Institute is particularly focused. We call it the Autonomous Transportation Public Trust Initiative, and it was recently accepted as a co-creation challenge at the Osaka World Expo over in Japan, which will launch next year. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, and your point about cybersecurity is central to that effort because when you take a look at the international treaties um, uh, that Chicago Convention, for example, um, that many of these treaties that address, for example, hijacking, um, the authors they couldn't at the time contemplate that unlawful seizure of control of an aircraft was even possible off board. And so when you look at the language, it all states very clearly defining hijacking as the use of force or threat of violence um, to um, exercise unlawful control of the aircraft from on board, right? And we see for these highly connected vehicles, if you can control an aircraft, if authorized persons can control an aircraft from the ground, of course, you don't need to know really anything about cybersecurity to understand that there are, communications means for authorized control. Therefore, there's some path to unauthorized seizure of control. And interestingly, when you take it even a step further, it's actually not necessary that a person who has a nefarious intentions, they don't even need to necessarily have computer hacking skills themselves. Um,
Sure.
Many of these vehicles will be remotely operated from designated operations centers. So just like hijacking, and this is a difficult topic to discuss, I understand, but hijacking could take place as simple as wielding a knife on board an aircraft to a pilot crew. Well, that same kind of approach could be taken, a simple knife wielded at an operations center on the ground, right? I mean, it's the same kind of
Yeah.
exerting unlawful control and influence over aircraft operations. And so we want to be very, very careful as we make this transition that we don't lose sight of the lessons that we've learned previously, right? I mean, loads of advancements in maintaining, secure um, means to protect the flight deck while the aircraft is being flown, right? No unauthorized access. And I think we need to apply those same kind of principles to on the ground operations centers, because unfortunately that gap in our international treaties does they would not or there's a strong risk that they wouldn't acknowledge that unlawful seizure through hacking or through um you know the threat of force at an operations center would actually constitute hijacking, and um be dealt with in an appropriate way. I think there's still a lot of contingencies that we need to sort out and make sure that we're all clear. Okay, as we make this transition, how are we going to deal with not only the fantastic and wonderful benefits that are possible, but also think in a very with a very sober approach, all of the what ifs and how it could be how it could go poorly.
Thank you so much for that. And I want to just one last, I know I'm going over, but this is so interesting. How do you regulate, how is this being incorporated with the airspace here in the United States and even across the world? So is it we've been hearing so much about airspace and air traffic control and drones and and now it's air mobility is just so fascinating and so new. How is it as far as airspace? What are those regulations like?
Mm. So this is an excellent question, and Raquel, I'd say that we there seems to be kind of like a bit of a tug of war at times, that there's still an effort. Some individuals seem to want drones, completely uncrewed aircraft um, to enter the national airspace, uh, perhaps unencumbered by any of the other electric aircraft systems. Um, our approach is, because these vehicles are going to be operating in the same at the same altitudes and the same geographic areas, and certainly by phase two will be operated and flown in very similar ways, that it only makes sense that they be addressed similarly. Um, I will say that ICAO has done a fantastic job to try to right draw in, especially on the technical side, an understanding of all the different possible ways that we could approach this new field being referred to as UAS traffic management, because there's broad consensus that our traditional ATC and certainly the sensors, the infrastructure that we use to track um, present day commercial aircraft, um, understandably, they were optimized for large radar cross section aircraft, right? So, and at higher altitudes, right? 10,000 feet and above. So we can't rely on those same systems to track much smaller, low flying aircraft. I'll also give a shout out to colleagues at Echodyne. They've been doing great work to try to build out and optimize radar systems that can track at lower altitudes and smaller cross sections. Um, there's just it's sometimes it's overwhelming to think about all of the new
Sure.
technology and systems and infrastructure both digital and physical, and the communications piece as well. I will say that I'm particularly excited about the parallel advancements in computing on the quantum side. I think that's going to be actually quite key to scaling up advanced air mobility operations, because we certainly can't rely on voice, right? ATC
Right.
controllers and
Sure.
pilots back and forth trying to stay, maintain situational awareness. But I also think that it's not enough that we simply have what in the military we would refer to as a common air picture. I don't think that's enough either. So we're going to need to get creative about how we leverage these new advancements in quantum computing, so that we can have a very robust vehicle to vehicle communications fabric, if you will, so that the vehicles themselves can provide higher resolution on their location, their trajectory, their altitude, and in that way we can keep more people safe.
Well, thank you so much. This is so fascinating. I mean, it's really I'd love to, stay in touch and with Captain Kadar. She's always so innovative and always, bringing these wonderful speakers like yourself to share. Thank you, Captain Kadar, for this as well, for having me and inviting me. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for your time, and
Yes.
I look forward to seeing how this advances.